All right, let's move on. We were talking about content validity. Classroom tests must have a very high content validity, meaning that the test must be able to assess the comprehensiveness of the content covered by the study, as well as the level of difficulty of the cognitive dimensions covered by the study. Let's go to the predictive validity. As the term suggests, if a test has high predictive validity, it can forecast or predict what's going to happen later on in terms of or what is likely to happen, given the result of the current test to take. So predictive validity, by definition, is the degree to which scores on a scale or test predict later behaviors or scores, and the examples given are students who rate high on a scale designed to predict criminal behavior are later found to have high interest arrest rates. Applying this to educational setting, we expect that aptitude test, for example, in BUSE and Bicol University, yung BUSET na tinatawag natin, Bicol University College Entrance Examination, it has got to have a predictive validity, meaning those who got very high, for example, in BUSET, are expected to be able to graduate with honors. If indeed the test has predictive validity, then those who scored very high in the BUSET should also maybe graduate cum laude, should have a very high GWA at the end of 4 years, should be able to pass the licensure examination for the degree that they have taken, because they have a very high BUSET rating. So tests like aptitude tests must be strong in predictive validity. Let's go to what we call concurrent validity. This is defined as the degree to which a scale or test correlated with another conceptually related scale test or other variable measured at the same time. Example is students who indicated positive attitude towards individuals of different races or ethnicities are found to behave in positive ways towards classmates of different races or ethnicities. So in other words, kaya nga ang tawag ay concurrent, may concurrent validity. Like, for example, if you are mathematically inclined, may natural ability for numbers ka, the test in algebra or the test in, let's say, geometry, should have a concurrent validity with the test in, let's say, trigonometry, because they are related somehow. Okay, that's concurrent validity. Sige. Construct validity. What do we mean? This is the degree to which a scale or test has a pattern of correlation with other variables that would be predicted by a sound theory. Example, students who score well on a test of mechanical ability do better on average in auto mechanics scores than in music, art, or English scores. So, iyon po ang ibig sabihin, if you have, for example, let's have another example here, my construct validity. If you are a very good reader, you read a lot, expectedly, your comprehension is high. And we also expect that your vocabulary is wide. Is that not true? So, If you give a reading test, ang expectation mo, your expectation would be for one who is a very good reader, who reads a lot, would have a very high score in the reading test. Likewise, if you give a vocabulary test, he would also get a very high rating on that because expectedly his vocabulary, because he reads a lot, would be wide. No? So, if the vocabulary test says this, very high siya, then we say that that test has a construct validity. Yung dalawa go together. No? Because they are related. Vocabulary and reading ability. Certainly, you cannot, if your vocabulary is very limited, your reading score in reading test would also definitely not very high. Okay. All right. There will be a few items talking about the characteristics of a good test. What are these characteristics? We have objectivity. It should yield, it should approximate the true score. The raw score must approximate the true scores. In other words, we should lessen, there should be a less or reduction in the number of errors that would influence the behavior, test-taking behavior of the examinee. And as we know, objective test types like true or false, multiple choice are scored better than tests like essays because we say that those are objective tests and the essays are subjective. All right. So, scores. After giving the test, what follows is scoring the test. Scores. What do scores mean? This is what we are going to take up today. And please bear with me because we will have a little, we will be playing with numbers, a little educational statistics here. This is very important because teachers are asked to make reports that contain statistics. Teachers are asked to make grades that contain statistics. So we have to learn how to process the scores that the test yield. So how do we give meanings to scores? Let's try to consider this example. Suppose Johnny got a score of 15 on his spelling test. What does this score mean? And how should we interpret it? Standing alone, meaning that 15, the score of 15. Standing alone, the number has no meaning at all and is completely uninterpretable. What does it mean? Does it represent the perfect score of 15 out of 15? What's 15? As revealed in that example, Johnny got a score of 15 on his spelling test. Must one jump up and down because Johnny got 15? Unless he knows that what that 15 means, then we can't really know, what That means, does it mean 15 out of 50? So even if we know it is 15 out of 50 or 30%, ano? What then? Okay, what does it mean? So in other words, we have to draw meaning from the value that we see. In other words, the score. What is the meaning of this score? When we put meaning to that score, that is what we mean when we say we interpret the score. So as it stands then, a score of 15, word correct, or 30% has no direct meaning or significance. The score has meaning only when we have some standard with which to compare it. Take note, standard with which to compare. Without that standard, the score has no meaning. So we need to have frames of reference, so to speak, when we try to interpret what the score yielded by the test mean. So the way we derive meaning from a test score depends on the context or frame of reference in which we wish to interpret it. The first dimension is what we call temporal dimension, is the focus of our concern, what a person can do now or what that person is likely to do in the future. What do we want to know? Are we interested in describing the current state or in forecasting the future? What is it that we want to know? Second dimension in our frames of reference, the assessment of capacity. The contrast between what people can do and what they would like to do or would normally do. When we ask a person's capacity, we determine maximum performance. And when we ask about a person's preference or habits, we assess typical performance. What is it then that we would like to see in assessing the capacity of individuals? Is it what he can do at the maximum level? Or is it typical or atypical? Is his behavior typical or different from the deviating from the typical, or what we call atypical? That's the second dimension. In our frames of reference, let's look at the third dimension. Or before that, maximum performance implies a set of tasks. Take note, a set of tasks that can be judged for correctness. So maximum performance ng capacity ay merong correctness. In other words, there is a right answer. But with typical performance, there is not a right answer. But we must ask whether the individual's responses are like those of most people or are unusual in some way. Is that what we want? Is he deviating from the usual way things are done? In other words, is he deviating from the norm? Nakikita ko sa picture. All right, the third dimension in our frames of reference is the nature of the standard against which we compare a person's behavior in comparison with that of other people. Remember the instructional decisions that we talked about earlier on? Many instructional decisions in schools call for information about what a student or group of students can do now. So whenever we ask questions about how much a person can do, There is also the issue of the purpose of our evaluation. What are we evaluating for? All right, you learned earlier on about the difference between summative and formative evaluation. Let's go back, fall back on this. If the purpose, you see, we are talking about purpose of evaluation or assessment, no? If the purpose is to make a summary statement of the person's accomplishment to date, from the start of the school until now, for example, you want to describe what he can do, what he has learned. Another example is what the teachers do at each quarter. Then the purpose is summative evaluation. The summative evaluation provides a summary of student achievement. And of course, the summary will be reported in quantities and quality as well. That's why when we say assessment is a collection of evidences, and the evidences could be in the form of quantitative or qualitative data that we attach the meaning of. So this data that we collect will have got to be interpreted or attached a meaning to. Okay? Summative evaluation. Another evaluation you have earlier learned about is formative evaluation. If the purpose of the test is to determine the students' strengths and weaknesses, the areas they are doing well and those they're doing poorly, the purpose is called formative evaluation. And this is what the teacher does day in and day out, formative evaluation. Test results here are mostly for the teacher's consumption because test results in formative evaluation are used to inform and guide instruction. You also frequently hear achievement test, right? So you're very familiar with achievement test, usually given quarterly in the case of DepEd, no? So the achievement test is the type of maximum performance test that describes what a person has learned to do given within a given period. This is the most that you can do. A description of that is achievement test, what the person has learned to do within a given period, first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter, etc., or within a year, within a grade. So we have quarterly test, we have a year-end test. Okay, you also learn or hear many times what is called as domain reference. Another way of saying this is criterion reference test. What is this? No? The criterion reference tests are tests concerned with level of mastery of defined skills. Level of mastery. Take note. They are focused solely on reaching a standard of performance on a specific skills called for by the test exercises. When we talk about level of mastery, who will be interested in knowing this? Certainly, the entity that devised the content and performance standard. Who set that? In the case of the Philippine educational system, of course, the DepEd. The DepEd defines the content and performance standard that must be reached by students at each grade level. So, the test itself and the domain of content provided by DepEd represents or provide the standard. So, ladies and gentlemen, the result of the achievement, the result of the NAT, the result of the achievement test, the result of the division-wide test given to students, represent the standard against which, will be pitted the performance of children. It's of the children. Not against each other, but against that standard set by the DepEd. Okay? If it is done that way, then we say that the test given is criterion reference test. All right. What is called as norm reference test? Norm reference tests are tests concerned with determining whether students are showing satisfactory achievement when compared with students in other schools, in other places. So, necessarily, statistics po ay kailangan dito kasi we will be dealing here with means and standard deviation when comparing students against others, schools against other schools. It's not against standard, but student pitted against student, schools pitted against schools. Okay. Norm reference. Other purposes of evaluation. You hear also of aptitude tests. These are tests that provide information on what a person can learn to do. It provides prediction about future learning or performance. Like I said earlier, Busset is an example of aptitude test. What can result of Busset tell us? The result of Busset tells us you are likely to succeed in engineering because you are good in this, in this, in this. You are good in math. You are good in math. Okay. Saan ka nag-enroll? Nag-enroll sa Speech and Theater Arts or nag-enroll sa AB English dahil your linguist, your ability, your intelligence, we call if you test the multiple intelligence, you are good at languages. Okay. So the aptitude will test or will tell you you are likely to succeed in this career because you show that you are good in this or good in that. You are likely to succeed. So that is predictive. Another kind of set of tests are what we call personality tests. Personality tests that provide estimates, not direct measure, but estimates of what a person is likely to do with an eye to aspects of the person's personality or temperament. Okay. Most personality tests, would be able to, not necessarily, yes, I may use the word predict. He is likely to do this, given the temperament that he has. He's aggressive. He's likely, faced with this kind of event, he is likely to do this. Okay. So, mga test sa magpupulis o kaya sa mga peace officers, etc., ay kumukuha sila ng ganitong uri ng examination para makita ang kanilang future. What is it that they are likely to be able to do given the temperament that they have? Okay. Take note. Most effective predictors of future learning are measures of past learning. What does this mean? When you take your BUSET, what's BUSET again? It's an aptitude test. BUSET is the BU College Entrance Examination. So much of the result of BUSET is dependent on what you have learned in the past. So if you come from a very good school that taught you so well, no, you are likely to get a high score in the BUSET. Compare him with somebody who came from Muchong, a very, very far off school where teachers only probably meet them only for 2 days in a week. Absent na ng Lunes, uuwi pa ng Thursday, no? So, ang pagtuturo ay kulang na kulang, inadequate na maigi. So even if that child coming from a very depressed area, rural area, very depressed area, even if is naturally bright, he will score very low in the BUSET compared with one who has attended an international school like, you know what, no? Alagang-alaga sila doon. Tinuruan ng gusto. So kahit medyo average lang, mataas ang magiging kuha niya ng BUSET, score niya sa BUSET because of the privilege that he has enjoyed, in that particular school. So, as I said here, most effective predictors of future learning are measures of past learning. I'm reminded, some time ago, many years ago, I asked or requested a head of a college. I'm not going to mention the college. I said, the Lola of this girl wants her to get into Pickle University because, it's the only university that she would not spend. She doesn't have much, she said. This is the only university that can provide education for my brilliant makuapo. Brilliant. However, coming from a school I'm not going to mention, a private school, coming from that school, she only got 84, percentile rank, 84. And she's enrolling in a, difficult degree course program. I'm not even going to mention that program. So it happened that it was a new program and there were, fewer applicants for that program. So in short, she was accommodated in that program, not so much because I requested, as because they needed more enrollees for that new program. So yung PR na 84, na hindi sana dapat, because 85 yung nakaset na ay inaccommodate. In short, dumaan ang panahon, she became a very, very good leader. No? And the first ever exam, licensure exam for that very difficult program, she passed it. And now she's she's very affluent now. No? She's working abroad as a you know what. Okay? What do I mean when I said this? When I gave this as an example? The BUSET, I'm not saying it's not it's not really a very direct or sure measure of the ability of a student, because as I said here, future learning are measures of past. Most effective predictors of future are measures of past learning, meaning He just happened to get that 84 PR 84 because of the school where she came from. So, intellectually, as the Lola said, she's brilliant. But because of his past learning, which was inadequate, that was the only score he got, PR 84. It would not have qualified her, except that the program needed enrollees. Okay, so anyway, she's now a very successful professional, hired abroad for the very good performance he has. Okay, to move on. The distinction between an aptitude and an achievement test often lies more in the purpose for which the test results are used than in the nature or content of the test itself. Okay, so maaring ang achievement test, maaari for the lack of an aptitude test, ay maaaring gawing aptitude test, for the purpose of selection. So sometimes this kind of test is used for this. So even if it's called achievement, it may be used for purposes other than measuring achievement, like for the purpose of selection or placement. Clear po tayo, no? Diyan. Now, as I said earlier on, numbers are numbers which need to be processed to be given meaning. Without the meaning, it's nothing. Now, to process the test results, you need to use some statistics. Okay? And usually, for classroom purposes and for other purposes, we need no more than descriptive statistics. So descriptive statistics often used in educational setting will be our next topic.